Hello, my name is Henry Keane. This is News Pulse at UATV. Welcome to the daily segment. Today in the episode, reality starts to kick in for Russia. The only highway connecting the annexed peninsula of Crimea and Russian mainland is completely controlled by Ukraine. Russia threatens more massive attacks at Kiev, while China interferes all of a sudden and warns Putin not to do it. Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya, Belarusian opposition leader, visits Kiev for the first time. See the details in our story for you. The Novorossiya highway, this critical route, is 600 kilometers long from Rostov-on-Don to Crimea via Mariupol and Melitopol, has become a primary target. Ukrainian Hornet AI-powered drones have destroyed dozens of fuel tankers and military trucks along this corridor, forcing Russian authorities to restrict civilian truck traffic as of May 21, 2026. To restrict means actually to close it for civilian traffic now, which makes it most literally a great filter for the Ukrainian army. This highway Novorossiya is not only lifeline, it is the only lifeline to annexed Russian mainland of the peninsula of Crimea. No Novorossiya, and Crimea becomes a genie sealed in the bottle. Ukraine does not even have to do anything else but get and hold a grip on this road, making sure no lorry comes in or out, and watch annexed Crimea just choking. It doesn't mean controlling Novorossiya is a key to the castle of Ukrainian victory, but it surely means it is a key to the auxiliary buildings of it, so to say, as Crimea was, is, and always will be seen by Ukraine as Ukrainian land annexed by Russia and treated accordingly. Also tonight, the oil depot belonging to Intekhim in the village of Kandri, Republic of Bashkortostan, caught a big and beautiful fire. And this looks strange because just recently there was another explosion, and the power station called Nurlino in the same Republic of Bashkortostan. Well, perhaps the local guerrilla at work, as otherwise it is quite hard to explain this series of explosions one after the other.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Putin is in agony, no exaggeration to state that, because every time when Russia suffers mounting problems on the front line or in its economy, it begins to threaten with more terror. And these are threats remaining just threats. Russia lacks any new military capabilities. This time, the Russian Foreign Ministry has claimed that Russian forces are beginning systematic continuous strikes against Ukrainian defense industry companies, as Russians call them, decision-making centers in Kyiv. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio says Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov asked him to convey message to Trump directly from Vladimir Putin that Russia would strike Kyiv again. Well, according to Rubio, he and Lavrov discussed Russia's call for staff of foreign diplomatic missions to leave Kyiv ahead of new Russian attack. Well, regarding these decision-making centers, I have something to say. The Kremlin just recently said that since Ukraine is not a sovereign country, decisions for it are made in, attention, Washington, D.C. Well, I guess with these new statements from Russia with Lavrov, Marco Rubio should be better calling for an immediate major test of White House underground shelters. Russia being Russia, it is threatening diplomats and foreigners again, forcing them to leave Kyiv. But European Union understands clearly if the statement of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a masterpiece in anything, then it must be hypocrisy. A regime that has spent years bombing residential buildings, museums, maternity hospitals, schools and power grid here in Ukraine, now all of a sudden speaks the language of international humanitarian law and somehow informs international diplomats of future attacks.
We understand exactly what this means. Russia wants fear, panic, isolation of Ukraine. It will not work. The EU is not going anywhere. We are staying in Kyiv. We are staying with Ukraine. Threats against diplomats and international organizations are not a sign of strength. They are a sign of desperation. The more aggressive and threatening the Kremlin becomes, the clearer it is that Putin's regime understands it cannot break Ukraine's resilience, nor the support of its partners. Katerina Mathernova, ambassador of the European Union to Ukraine on Facebook.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine expresses its sincere gratitude to all foreign diplomatic missions and all foreign diplomats who continue their work in Ukraine during this time of war, thus simply dismissing Russian hypocrisy, blackmail, and threats.
For 4 years and 3 months, Russia has been attacking Kyiv on a weekly basis with ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as swarms of drones, killing civilians and causing destruction. Today, it plays an entirely new card by threatening to attack Kyiv. What does this signify? Georgy Tihy, spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Moreover, the Polish Foreign Ministry, responding to Russian threats, has stated that any attacks on the country's diplomatic missions will be treated as deliberate and intentional. The ministry said Russia's actions entail very serious legal and international consequences and further undermining its role as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. Russians have destroyed UN World Food Programme facility in Dnipro on May 25th. A Russian Iskander ballistic missile hit a warehouse which was storing humanitarian aid enough to feed 130 people actually in frontline regions. The estimated value of the destroyed food is approximately $1.5 million. The World Food Programme stressed that attacks on civilian and humanitarian infrastructure are prohibited by international humanitarian law, but these people were just too afraid, probably, to say the obvious. It was Russian missile, and it was Russia who attacked the UN warehouse. The leader of the Belarusian Democratic Forces, but the de facto elected president of her country, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, has arrived in Kyiv for her first official visit in 2020. She received between 70 and 90% of the votes in different regions, but the Central Election Committee of Belarus awarded the victory to Alexander Lukashenko. Well, why we're not surprised. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya arrived in Kyiv at the invitation of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss, in particular, a possible offensive from Belarus on Kyiv.
Svetlana Tikhanovskaya began her visit to Ukraine by visiting the grave of Belarusian activist Maria Zaitseva in 2020 after the Lukashenko regime dispersed protests in Minsk. Zaitseva moved to live in Ukraine. Following the full-scale Russian invasion, she joined one of the units of the armed forces of Ukraine. In January 2025, she was killed near Bakhmut. Tikhanovskaya also witnessed the aftermath of Russia's attack on Kyiv on the night of May 24th, damaged residential buildings, burned administrative offices, and destroyed shopping pavilions. The Belarusian politician stressed that responsibility for the attacks on Ukraine lies not only with Putin's regime, but also with Lukashenko, who provided Belarusian territory for Russian aggression and the stationing of weapons.
We
acknowledge that the Minsk regime has made Belarus complicit in this aggression, but Lukashenko is a usurper who lost the elections and does not represent the Belarusian people. He serves exclusively the interests of the Kremlin and Imperial Russia, but Belarus is not Russia, and Belarusians are not synonymous with this regime.
Tikhanovskaya received the invitation to visit Ukraine during her first official meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Vilnius earlier this year. At that time, the sides discussed sanctions against Lukashenko's regime and a joint strategy with European and American partners to hold Belarusian authorities accountable. Her visit to Kyiv took place just one day after Lukashenko announced his willingness to meet Zelensky anywhere in Ukraine or Belarus.
Recently, journalists asked me about Lukashenko's ridiculous proposals for a meeting with President Zelensky. Here is the answer. Ukraine has partners to meet and talk about our shared matters. So, Ms. Svetlana, once again, we welcome you and your team to Kyiv.
The Ukrainian and Belarusian delegations discussed regional security and the threats posed by Belarus to Ukraine, Poland, and the Baltic states. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha emphasized that Kyiv will respond firmly and proportionally to any provocations or hostile actions.
Our rhetoric is always based on concrete data and facts, and it is proportionate to the level of threat. When we see another attempt to drag the Belarusian people into this foreign war, we respond and will reply in kind. Ukraine will respond decisively and firmly, mirror style. We currently have all the capabilities to do so.
We fully understand that Ukraine is defending not only its independence today, it is fighting for the right of our peoples to live free from dictatorship, violence, and fear. And I am confident that Ukraine's victory will pave the way and bring freedom to Belarusians.
Andriy Sybiha also reported that he received a new package of proposals from the Belarusian opposition regarding sanctions against Lukashenko's regime, which Ukraine intends to bring for discussion at the European Union level. Kyiv also reiterated that it envisions a free and democratic Belarus in the near future, which could join the Lublin Triangle alongside Ukraine, Poland, and Lithuania. Reported by Yevhen Savitsky, UATV News.
Well, it seems to be for today. I'm Henry Keane. We are UATV. We thank you for your time and attention. Highly appreciated here in Ukraine. Please like, comment, and even maybe subscribe to our channel. UATV will be doing our best to keep you covered on whatever tomorrow holds for all of us, but we will certainly add something in Ukrainian perspective for it. Thank you, and see you.